reading from Josh and Me by Richard O'Brien. Chapter The Church and the Devil's Spider. Josh was the most loving person anyone had ever knew, and he loved each and every one of God's creatures, that is, except for spiders. He got it in his head that God must have made a mistake creating these 8-legged horrors, or that they were really the devil in disguise. As long as they stayed outside where they belonged, he tolerated them. But let one enter any building or dwelling of a man, and he was a knight on a crusade to save us from the terrors of that bug. Josh saw a show once where a spider was hiding in a man's shoe. From that moment on, before he put his boot on, Josh performed a ritual of purification to see if one was hiding inside, waiting to bite his foot. Of course, nothing could live in a place where his feet has been for more than a few seconds anyways. Looking for spiders became an obsession for Josh. He couldn't rest until he found and vanquished his foe. If I wanted to get rid of him for an hour or so, all I had to do was to suggest that there was a spider somewhere, and he'd be off on his quest. When Josh saw a spider, anything close at hand became his weapon of choice, from a broom to a bicycle tire pump. No obstacle could stop him from getting the enemy. Once I saw him fall through the floor of an old barn, and then run back up the ladder to kill a spider that was as big as a rat, or so he said. When one was in the house, Josh looked like a dancer trying to put out a forest fire, stomping until the bug was good and dead. His battles were legendary, and he was kind of a folk hero all over town. Though, when you come from a town as small as ours, the standard of a hero are a little lower than in a big city. One Sunday, when we were about 14 years old, the church was packed because the 4th of July picnic and our birthday party were both scheduled to happen right after the service. Josh has dressed in his best white jacket, blue shirt and tie. He wore his blue jeans and best brown cowboy boots too, which he spent hours the night before polishing, both the tops and the soles for some reason. He said it made them slippery, but he lied how he didn't make hardly any noise when he was walking down the aisle of the church. Pastor Green opened the service that morning with an announcement about the celebration at the afternoon and how special it was because it was going to be a party for Josh and me. He asked us to bow our heads in silent prayer as he did before he started preaching. Pastor Green stood in the pulpit directly in the center of the altar, up 3 small steps where he could look down at the entire congregation. People said it was a good thing that he did, because from up there he could keep a good eye on Josh, me, and the other young boys who had to sit up front so that we could behave. That day, out of the corner of my eyes, I caught a slightest movement right in front of our TV. There on the floor was the biggest wolf spider I ever seen. The National Geographical Society would have done one of their nature specials on it if I had had the time to call them. The evil must have gotten into me at that instant, because I immediately nudged Josh in the ribs and with the slightest movement of my eyes and head directed him to the movement. What happened next is a little hard to describe, but I'll do my best. It was like Josh had a radar lock on, just like jet fighter planes. And soon as his eye caught the movement and his brain identified what it was, Josh was no longer Josh. He was a possessed creature with only one objective: kill that spider. he became a killer angel, agent of God, sent to save that church and all those people from a great evil. You could see every muscle in Josh's body becoming rock hard, and his jaw became set and square. His eyes were so focused that if he had been Superman, he would have burned that bug with his X-ray vision. He grabbed the only thing available to him as a weapon, the Sunday Bulletin, and would it so tight that it was hard as a piece of wood. I could see the veins puffing out of his hands as he waited for his moment to strike. Silently and slowly, he arose from a sitting position and began to lean over the rail of the pew. I could see his brain making the complex calculations as to where the spider would intersect his reach and meet its death. But the spider path began to carry it farther away from where we were sitting and closer to Pastor Green's pulpit. Of course, with Josh's long arms and legs, the spider wasn't safe, no matter where it went. Josh began to reach out more and more while keeping perfect balance with his legs and cowboy boots. It was like watching a ballet dancer getting ready for a really high and beautiful jump. He brought his arm back until I could almost hear the muscles straining against themselves, begging for release. Then, just at the last moment, when Josh was ready to spring the trap of death, Satan moved my right hand, and I lifted Josh up on his feet a fraction of an inch. With his balance now thrown off, Josh's feet shoot over his head as the sound of an Indian war whoop left his mouth. He did a perfect somersault over the rail and went crashing flat on his back onto the wooden floor below, his boot thumping down to the altar steps like bass drum. In the perfect quiet and stillness of silent prayer, the effect was startling. Ladies screamed as their hats and glasses flew off, and as pocketbooks went flying into the air, and contents raining down like snow. Men fell over the seats or jumped up so hard that the keys in their pockets set off most of the car alarms in the parking lot. The organist fell off the organ bench backwards, and the choir let out a chord that has never been heard in a church before or since. Pastor Green jumped back and fell down the 3 steps in his robe and became entangled with Josh, who was still struggling to get up and kill the spider. But as he flailed around with the rolled-up bulletin trying to push Pastor Green out of the way, Josh couldn't locate the spider. When Pastor Green finally regained his composure, he asked Josh, in the most Christian tone he could master under the circumstances, what exactly he was trying to do. Josh explained that it was an evil spider and that he was saving the congregation from a fate worse than death. Before the preacher could say another word, a ripple of laughter started to run through the church and grew intensely with every passing second. There, square in the middle of Josh's new white birthday coat, was the squashed body of the biggest wolf spider anyone in town had seen. As soon as Josh turned around to see what people were laughing, the pastor and the choir all noticed the spider, and they all started laughing too. Josh was now truly a town folk hero and legend. Who else would sacrifice his only body and new birthday coat to save the church full of people from an evil bug? That was one of the best birthdays I ever remember. And that's the gospel truth of Josh and me and the evil spider.